Hey everyone, I'm wearing a suit today, so you know it's going to be a special video. We often get the complaint that, hey, we're not a real game studio. We don't know enough yet about game development to really help you guys. So instead of just stringing you along for 4 years until we are successful ourselves, I'm here in Japan today, and I'll be following along a real game development studio, Phoenix Game Productions, based here in Osaka, and just have a chat with them and talk about what are some struggles of indie game development. They've worked on actual, real, successful games that are more successful than what we've made, that's what you've made probably as well, so I think there's some interesting stuff there as well. So it's going to be more of an interview style video where I just sit down with the founder. So let's go. So maybe if we can give a little introduction, so I know you for 5 minutes or something at this point. I did some previous looking on Google, but maybe who are you? Because you've had quite a lot. You come from Germany originally and then you ended up on the other side of the world. So maybe a bit about you. How did you get here?
Good question. I come from Germany. I lived near Munich for most of my life. And originally how it all started was around, I think, 2010, a studio in Denmark, Interceptor Entertainment. They started up back then, and they did the Rise of the Triad remake. So that was my first professional gig, actually, working on that project. And even at that time already, I wanted to live in Japan. That was just a dream of mine. And I've been learning Japanese since I think 2006 or 2007.
Long time.
So eventually the goal was to be able to move over there. And so in 2013, I got the chance to move over here and work in Fukuoka at CyberConnect 2. So and then I worked there for 2 years. I worked on...
What kind of role was that then?
Game designer. So it was interesting. At Interceptor, my work was more like specifically level design, and then in CyberConnect 2, it became more like a broader game designer role. So then I worked there on Naruto, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, eventually from there. I wanted another challenge. I wanted I was interested at the time in Platinum games. So thankfully I got a job offer, and one led to another. And so in 2015 I was in Osaka, and I worked at Platinum for in total 4 years.
And in 2019 you were like, let's do something else?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think I wanted to make a studio for a longer time, but I mean, you don't just do that from one day to another, right? I think whenever you do it, you're still gonna feel a little bit underprepared. But at least at that point, I felt like, okay, there's a few things that I would like to try to do differently. So in 2019, figured, okay, let's give it a try. Let's see how this works out.
That was right before COVID. Did that throw a massive wrench in the plans?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it changed things a lot, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, in terms of how we are working, right? At the time we started to focus much more on remote work. But also because of that, what kind of projects we are doing, what kind of clients we are working with. But thankfully, even during that period, it changed a lot, but many of us had experience working remotely, so it wasn't that painful. And, thankfully there were projects that, if anything, we were able to do more with what we were used to. So in the end, it worked all out. Yeah.
So I originally got to know you because of your game that you're working on, Tokyo Underground Killer, but were you already working on it in 2019? That was not maybe what the studio started as, or how did that evolve?
So we wanted, the original idea for Tokyo Underground Killer was already there in 2014. Okay. So when I opened up the studio, from the beginning I wanted to make Tokyo Underground Killer. But then obviously the reality is also that you need to have money coming into the company, right? And when we started, we were in total, I think, including me, we were 3 people. So at first it was really just let's do a little bit whenever we have time, right? And so I would say the first 2 years were kind of like that. Was a little bit of progress here and there, while just trying to build something up with the company.
That was then mixed with mainly contract work, I guess, where you had a specific focus in the VFX or something, or what was the original pitch when you went to other companies of hey, hire us, so to say, for your game?
I think initially we were mostly focused on level and game design. And then slowly from there it evolved just naturally because of what we needed internally and also what thankfully some of our clients wanted. It evolved more like, like getting environment artists, getting programmers into the company. And yeah, it's just like gradually, like we got more and more people in from there.
I mean, yeah, definitely. Like over the past 4 years, you've grown a lot. I think, is there like a specific focus that you're growing the company into? Because of course, Tokyo Underground Killer, it's very visual. It gives me like John Wick vibes as well with like their latest one. Is that like on purpose, or is it just like, oh, we need an extra programmer, let's just hire an extra one now? Or is there more of a like plan in terms of that?
Probably a little bit of both. So obviously, we look at, okay, like what do we need right now? Like which kind of people do we need in the company? And that partially affected which people we hired. But then at the same time, for example, yeah, like you mentioned, like there's a certain visual focus in Tokyo Underground Killer. And we were also looking, okay, like which kind of people understand what we're trying to do here. And obviously because we are after all a small company, usually people in our company have to do more than just one thing, right? Like an environment artist maybe also does weapons, or like a game designer will also do level design. Yeah. So we were also looking for those kind of people who would, if anything, be interested in working in that kind of environment and who want to be like, okay, I want to do more, right? Like I want to do this other thing as well, right? Like I want to try all these different parts.
Yeah, I think that's maybe a bit of a difference when you're like a small indie, like we're like 4 people, 5 people. You need to wear like 17 hats. Yeah. You can't like choose to only do one thing. Was that different to what you did in Platinum Games, for example, where you were like, I do level design and don't talk to me about anything else? And is that like the general AAA experience, so to say, of like you get like one hyper-specific person and then you suddenly make that indie studio and you have to find different people like who can do more stuff at the same time?
I would say like Platinum was actually, they are obviously much bigger than our studio, but I would say like the mentality was not that different. I felt, because even back then, depending on, what the project was and what circumstances you had, you still needed to wear different hats. Yeah. If anything, I would probably say that the experience at Platinum helped me also to broaden my mind a little bit, so yeah.
Yeah, because of course you come from that like bigger company background already. Do you think that has helped you a lot with like running this company, or is it like, no, it's actually like kind of a different skill set to be like, I'm gonna run my company versus I used to work on just games purely?
I mean, it's a different experience for sure. I would say the experiences from the past helped a lot, because obviously, I mean, some of these experiences are also pretty tough, right? Yeah. And those tough experiences helped me now, like with our own company, sometimes to get through, like harder times, or also just to stay cool, like if a lot of stuff gets thrown your way. So it definitely helps. On the other hand, I would also say, because of, now having the responsibility for the studio, right? Yeah. And looking at like, okay, like which steps do you need to take to make sure that the company continues, working properly. It also gave me a new understanding, of how, like, why certain things maybe worked, or how they worked in other companies. Yeah, I think it's like, you don't know how to be a good manager until you've had a bad one yourself, basically. You just know what not to do. Yeah, sometimes I really want to go back to some of my former employees and be like, I get it now, I understand it.
Yeah, I see that. So the idea for Tokyo Underground Killer has been there for like 10 years at this point.
Yeah, right.
When do you think you like really started on it? Like when you started Phoenix Game Productions then, I guess? And maybe a bit of like, what is the game for like the people watching?
I mean, like with Tokyo Underground Killer, from the very, very beginning, I had, the idea of, taking, like the neon lit Tokyo and putting that into a game. And so like the keywords that we often use during development of the project, neon light, high tempo, blood, like all these keywords, they came up very early on and they stuck with us throughout the whole project. So from the beginning on, I knew I wanted it to be a game that is, filled with neon light. It should be like you're getting really thrown deep into a world that is, like an almost more like a more extreme version of what maybe some people imagine when they hear Tokyo. And because of this feeling that I wanted to show, speed became very important. So naturally, from that point on, I thought, okay, in order to convey that properly, it should be more of an action game. Yeah. So then once I started thinking about like, okay, it's an action game and it takes place in Tokyo, from there on I started thinking about, like gangsters, Yakuza and all that. So in the end, like we ended up with, like making a game about a, supernatural assassin who works, whose job is to, kill targets in a neon-filled Tokyo. And our own experiences living in Japan, like the normal, even the normal salaryman life, all these things affected, like what we're showing in the game.
Yeah, I think you can't make a game like that without having like lived here as well. It's like I've played the Yakuza 0 before I came to Japan here as well to like prepare myself, because it's just such a different world that I think when you live in Germany, especially back in 2006, there was like, now anime and such is pretty big in the West, but I think back then it was like, what is Japan?
For sure.
So
I mean, I come from the countryside in Germany, right? Like, I mean, like it's just the complete opposite of, like what Tokyo or to a certain degree Osaka is. But if anything, like that's also what made me feel like, okay, like, like there might be potential in making a game like that. There might be people who would want to, experience a game like this.
Yeah. So you say there, like, there might be potential. That's of course how the idea starts. How do you like get to work and then validate? Is it purely like you say like, oh, there's potential and I'm gonna make this game? That's probably not like the best. You need to validate throughout development. Like, hey, is the stuff we're doing, is it good? Yeah. What have you been doing, or like the studio has been doing to like validate that so far?
I mean, we did a lot of playtesting, to be honest. At the beginning, when we were still working, only in a very small group on the project, we definitely had a time where we were, like trying to find like, okay, like what is the soul of the game? Why would other people be interested in it? Some of it is, maybe the other companies that we worked with in the past, like studios like New Blood, where we know, okay, like, there are people out there who want to play these kind of shooters, but these games, they don't have, the setting that we have, right? So we felt like looking at that, okay, like there might be like a space for our game in this market. And then on top of that, as we got, like the vision of the game much more clearly shaped out, we started just like also showing it to other people and seeing what their response was. And thankfully, we got a really good like a good reception for the game.
Yeah, I saw like so far you've only done like trailers basically, right? And like press release, and it's about 10,000-ish wish lists, I think, from what I saw online. You don't have to say the exact numbers, but that's still like not that bad for like only having done trailers. So are there plans for like further like demos and such as well, and like more public playtests? Because the game's gonna release 2024 still, hopefully?
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, we've been making a big push in the last few months to get the project into, a state where we feel comfortable showing more of it to the public. And like hopefully getting a demo ready before release. So I think like we'll have more of that sooner than later.
Yeah. Is there like much of a speed difference then? Because I think you're also listed as co-production for Phantom Fury, which is out now. So I guess that's a lot of time that goes back to your studio now that you can work on Tokyo Underground Killer, or?
I mean, how we're doing it is, like making sure that we have some people who can focus on co-development with other companies, and then having certain people who are focused on our own internal titles.
Yeah, so you have like two mini departments basically. Yeah. One is like, we need to earn money right now, do co-development, and then the other one is like, we want to make our own IP as well.
Yes, exactly, okay. Yeah.
And what would you say has been like the hardest of running your studio? What is like the thing that you were like the least prepared for?
It's a good question. Well, two things come to my mind. First of all, you have a lot of responsibility, right? Like you need to make sure in the end that, you have responsibility for all the people who are working at your company, right? So that's something that's just on my mind all the time, like making sure that, I'm able to pay everyone every month, and also making sure that it is an environment where people want to work. Yeah. That's the one thing. And then the other thing is, because we are a small company, I mentioned before, like, like many of us have to wear different hats. Yeah. And on my side as well, depending on what I'm doing, I have to focus on the creative side, but also just like, like on the management, on the business side. And those two aspects are not necessarily, the same, right? Like if anything, they often clash. Yeah. So what the business side or the production side might want in my mind, might be very different from what the creative side in my mind wants. Yeah. So managing these two aspects, right, and like finding like a good balance, that's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, you can't like go for the perfect vision but not be able to pay people because there's like no money coming
right.
either. Yeah.
So it's like in the end, obviously you want to make like the best game possible, and that's for us also important, especially as a small studio. Like when we release something, then you know we want people to really like it. Yeah. But then at the same time, okay, like how can we make this in a way that you know like is actually viable, right, in the long run?
Yeah, I see. So that was also something that I was wondering about. Like, okay, so funding-wise, you have the co-production, you got the Epic Mega Grant. One that you see very often with like studios, especially your size, is like things like publishers. Right now, I don't think there is like a full-on publisher, at least announced. Is that something you're actively still like looking into, but maybe because the current game dev market is not really, you've been like struggling a bit with that? Or is it also just like we want to self-publish ourselves because we can afford to?
So we are talking with publishers, that much I can say.
Okay. It helps.
Yeah, for sure.
And maybe a different question. When you look at a publisher, because for a lot of people, publishers, especially like starting indies, it's just, oh, it's money to fund the game. But I think, are there other things like marketing as well that you really feel like, oh, publishers can bring extra value? Or is it more just, okay, we need to be able to have these paychecks and that's the core thing right now?
I mean, I would say like ideally when you work with a publisher that, I mean, like obviously we all want funding, right? Like that's one thing. But then on top of that, I think from beginning, being aligned with the publisher on what the vision is for the game, right? That what they want and that what we want is aligned, right? Like I think that's very important. Yeah. Like obviously, they have their own things that they want, right? And it's not necessarily always going to align, but I think like there needs to be, you know, like a certain, you know, like a basis where both sides can say, okay, like this is what we want out of this project, and ideally we are aligned on that from early on. So I think that's important. If you have that, on top of that, I would say marketing, absolutely. I mean, in our case, you know, I wish we would have a person in our company who would just focus on marketing. Yeah. And the other thing is definitely QA.
QA, yeah, definitely. Yeah, so the past like 2 years basically, and then you started in COVID, and then once COVID ended, like the game dev apocalypse like kind of started. Yeah, has it been here in Japan as much of an issue as well? Because like you hear a lot of it in like the US and in Europe as well, studios shutting down, but sometimes economically Japan can be more isolated. Is that for game dev here a bit the case as well, where everyone loves their Switch games still, whereas like Europe, I don't think Switch is that big anymore? Or do you really have like the same issues basically?
I would say it's not as extreme as in the West, no, because I mean, in the West it's pretty wild right now. But then on the other side, I mean, just the other day, you know, like there was the news of Tango closing down. So I don't think you can say that it hasn't affected, you know, like Japan at all. I hope that, you know, like this is where it ends as far as Japan is concerned, that, you know, like no more studios are affected. But we'll see. Right now it feels, you know, like that it's not as extreme as, you know, over in the West.
Then those two things combined, like if you were back like 2019 and you could like go back, would you still take that same jump of quitting Platinum Games and starting your own? Or is it like, you're not gonna sleep, don't do it, wait like 4 years before you start your studio?
Wouldn't change anything.
You would do it still, yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's the spirit.
Yeah.
I think those are the main questions I had. So thank you so much for taking the time and like answer this.
No problem, you're welcome.
So yeah, what should they do? Where can they go wishlist? Give like this, the 30-second pitch for Tokyo Underground Killer maybe once again.
Yeah, so I mean, Tokyo Underground Killer is a very high-speed, melee-focused, neon-based FPS that takes place in Tokyo. There's quite a bunch of stuff that we haven't shown yet. So the game has, you know, like a very fast-paced loop of, you know, like going from missions to missions, using skills, sword combat. But then besides that, you also return to your apartment, and you can have, you know, like these small parts where you can go outside into the city, you can play pachinko, you can play Japanese mini games. So even outside of the combat, there's quite a bit, you know, like stuff to enjoy in the game. It has great music by Andrew Hulshard and awesome comic scenes drawn by Hans Steinbach. And you can wishlist it on Steam if you look for Tokyo Underground Killer.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that wraps up the video. I hope this was still interesting. It's a bit of a different video than what we usually do, but I think this is a lot of value and is something that can also separate us from the other game dev YouTubers who just sit in a room and make devlogs. It's really not the way I want to go. I want to try out some more stuff. So let me know as well, what did you think of this video? What can I do better next time? I still have a few interviews planned, like with publishers, with Japanese press. So I think if those are some things that you're interested in, let me know as well down below. I really want to learn more from you guys because I'm just trying to figure things out as well. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.